All right, where were we? Just a quick, let's see. We were talking about sort of the harmonies and harmonic goals of Tristan and Isolde, the prelude. And we discovered that we had a sequence. And we have this idea 3 times. And each time it ends on a dominant 7 chord. The first time a dominant 7 in the key of A, then it goes up and we get that next dominant 7th in the key of C, and then lastly we get a dominant 7th in the key of E. Prior to the dominant 7 chord, we have this as our first harmony, this very weirdly spelled half diminished 7. We'd have to respell it, all those, the B, D sharp, and G sharp all as flats to be able to actually stack it into thirds. Or we could spell the F natural as an E sharp, and it would be an E sharp half diminished 7. But this half diminished 7, which we call the Tristan chord, because we're not really sure how it's going to resolve. It doesn't resolve like a normal half diminished 7. Typically we see a half diminished chord either resolve as like as a leading tone in a major key, or we might hear a half diminished 7 as 2, right? If we're in a minor key, the 2 chord is a half diminished 7. But this half diminished 7 is really just 1 half step away from turning into a French 6 chord. And that's what we get each time in the sequence. And that gives it its sense of kind of rising and sort of this deceptive sense of where the music is going in the harmony. Now, a lot of you pointed out that there felt like there was a goal right here. So let's see if we can get that figured out. We're going to go from, I'll play from the beginning, and I'm going to get up to this point, and let's see if we can figure out why this is some sort of harmonic goal. Okay, yeah, this was, right here was the da 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 da, we want G sharp, A, but we went too far, B, A. Well, let's take a look at these harmonies. Here we have E, G sharp, B, D, and we get more of that E, G sharp, B, D. Of course, we have a lot of chromatic passing motion. So when we have that E, G sharp, B, D, which by the way, that's our 5, 7 in the key of A, we get all of these other notes that add some spice to it. Where should it go? That's where it should have gone. It should have gone da 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 da, A major or A minor or something like that. But instead, we go to this chord, F major. So if we're in the key of F, excuse me, if we're in the key of A minor, I guess I should make this a small a. Because we kind of decided it didn't have a lot of that going on. If we're in the key of A minor, then this is a 5 resolving to 6. So we did all of that work to get all the way up the chromatic scale just to get to 5 to 6. So we have an evaded or deceptive cadence, right? We were expecting 5 to 1, but we evaded the resolution to 1 by instead moving to 6. Now, there's one other thing that makes it so like full of that tension and is it going to resolve, is this B. That B there adds even more to the deceptive cadence. And Wagner sits on it for a long time. Duh. Wait, hold on. Let me try to get. What do we call it when instead of going to the right note, we go too high to the wrong note, and then finally you come back to the right note? The answer is appoggiatura. Right? So that's, Wagner's not only doing deceptive motion and all this chromaticism, he also puts an appoggiatura to extend that like sense of whether it's going to resolve. Now it turns out that we actually do get something that resembles an authentic cadence a little bit later. But this next cadence that happens a little later isn't actually all that noticeable. He puts it, he's going to do some stuff. I'm going to play up to measure 25. So starting with measure 16, going to 25. And you'll notice that when we get to 24, 25, you're going to hear another sense of arrival. Did you hear it? It felt like when we got to here, da, starting here, da, 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 we get a nice A major chord. Of course, we get to the A major chord with a lot of this extra tension. Notice that it's not re, mi, it's re, 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 mi. Right, so we get the sharp 5. So here is our regular 5, but then by changing it to B sharp, that makes it a sharp 5. And then when we finally get the resolution, the 5-1, notice that a bunch of our notes still haven't resolved. We still are waiting for the G sharp to go to A, we're still waiting for the suspension. So we have 2 retardations and a suspension on that resolution, adding more to that sense of tension and release. Here is measure 23. So we do, in fact, in the music, on occasion, get some 5-1 motion. We do get some actual cadences, but you'll notice that the cadences, they're not particularly strong. We don't really ever get a sense of satisfaction in the way that he approaches them, right? This is an imperfect cadence. It's got a lot of notes that still need to go. He also uses it as the beginning of his next phrase. Notice also that it doesn't happen on a downbeat. He's putting this cadence on the middle of the bar, making it less strong. So most of what we hear in this opera is this kind of resolution, 5 to 6. We don't get a lot of 5-1 because he wants to, again, sort of keep that tension going all the way through the music. This is a good place for me to stop for this today, but we're going to go over some more Wagner on Friday. One of the things I want to talk about, though, is, and I want to put this in your ear, is some of Wagner's controversy. So he wasn't just a composer, and he even had a way of thinking about his music and his opera. And he even coined a term, Gesamtkunstwerk, which means total artwork. The idea was when he wrote his music, he also actually wrote his own opera lyrics, or what is known as the libretto. So he wrote the whole libretto, he wrote all the music, but not just that, he put detailed staging directions into his music to make sure that the music was always matching up with what was going on stage. Now, you might think that's like, okay, so he did that. Well, he also had plans that he drew up to build his own opera house because he was such a passionate person about the theater. And so one of the things is that Wagner actually conceived of his own theater and how it would be built to be able to put on performances of his show. That theater is still there in Bayreuth, Germany. This was when it was he got King Ludwig, who was considered to be the Mad King, to make these enormous financial investments to build Wagner's opera house. Wagner also designed his own brass instruments. He felt like there needed to be new sounds and new timbres for some of his work. Like he didn't feel the existing instruments had enough like range and sort of in the sound and quality that he was trying to get. So he even invented these small tubas. This is a really old picture. You can find prettier, newer looking ones. So this is known as the Wagner tuba, and he conceived of this sort of smaller instrument that had kind of like a dark edge to it, so his brass would growl even more. So we're talking about an artist who didn't just write the music, he wrote the book, he designed the opera house, he designed instruments, had extensive staging notes, and was also very vocally racist, particularly anti-Semitic. He spoke, so this is where we get to the darker part, he spoke very disparagingly against Jews. And so one of the things that we have to talk about when we're dealing with the art of somebody who had such a poor view of humanity and again maybe someone who was so brilliant in one ways but so small-minded in other ways. Is it possible to separate the art from the artist? And what if his music sort of glorifies like a sense of German purification that later on in the 20th century resulted in very, very terrible atrocities committed on humanity. So these are just some things that I do want to discuss on Friday, but I wanted to bring out some of this stuff. I want you to be thinking about the concept of a total artwork, or what goes into a production, and also be thinking about can we still appreciate and love music or a work of art if it came from a dark place. So anyway, let's continue on Friday.